please welcome AJC Executive Council member, Melanie Nelkin.
Good morning, and welcome to AJC's Day 2 of Global Forum. This morning's plenary promises to be an inspiring one. We will honor heroic leaders from various fields who have demonstrated extraordinary courage. But before we look ahead, we're going to take a moment to look back, to remember and pay tribute to two courageous AJC leaders who inspired generations of global advocates. Unfortunately, they are no longer with us. Both passed away in the last year. Felice Guerre and Jean Dubois were two extraordinary members of AJC's professional team. Felice served as director of AJC's Jacob Blaustein Institute for the Advancement of Human Rights, or JBI, for over 3 decades. She was a scholar and an internationally renowned human rights expert who brought life and practical significance to strengthening global human rights mechanisms. She leaves a legacy as a legendary champion for human dignity and as a fierce advocate for the protection of women and vulnerable minorities. Jean held many senior roles at AJC throughout his distinguished career, including as director of 3 separate offices and as the founding director of AJC's Berlin office. For nearly 2 decades, he oversaw all of AJC's regional offices across the country, helping shape and expand the organization's national reach and impact. As a member of JBI's Administrative Council, I had the privilege of working closely with Felice, witnessing her extraordinary leadership and determination firsthand. Felice was a mentor and a scholar and a strategist, and she was really funny. Many were inspired through her practical experience and wisdom in her efforts to make the world better for all humanity. I also had the pleasure of interacting with Jean in 2016 when I participated in the AJC Adenauer Leadership Exchange Program to Germany that he founded. I was blown away by his dedication for so many years to the German-Jewish relationship and continued to follow the weekly newsletter he wrote in retirement with his many astute geopolitical observations. He was a beloved AJC colleague who built many bridges. Today, we express our deep gratitude to Felice and Jean for their contributions to AJC and to the global Jewish community, and we honor the enduring impact that they had on the world. May their memories be for a blessing. Please turn your attention to the screens.
I always have found the 3-part expression by Rabbi Hillel to sum up the approach I've always taken to human rights and most other things in life. He said, if I'm not for myself, who will be? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?
Remember that your voice matters. You can get involved. You can speak out, and there's no better time to act than right now. Thank you very much.
I'm Eugene Dubow, founding director of AJC's Berlin office, which opened in 1998.
I need to give a big shout out to Jean Dubow. Jean Dubow had been one of those AJC staffers who believed in the German outreach from the beginning. And throughout the 70s and 80s, Jean had been part and parcel of all of these initiatives that we had undertaken.
Please welcome AJC Honorary President John Shapiro.
Good morning. As we continue to the theme of honoring towering figures, we now wish to honor another giant and dear friend of AJC, Chairwoman Nita Lowey, who recently passed away. Congresswoman Lowey was more than a political powerhouse. She was a trailblazer. As the first woman to chair the House Appropriations Committee, a co-founder of the House Bipartisan Task Force to combat antisemitism, and a devoted champion of international human rights and religious freedom. She was a tireless advocate whose legacy transcends party line. A beacon of light for all of us, she inspired countless others to lead with courage and compassion. For AJC, though, she wasn't just a partner, she was a family member. Tonight, I'm delighted, or this morning, I'm delighted that we're joined by her husband, Steve, daughter, Dana, son-in-law, David, and grandson, Daniel, who I can't see any of you, but I assume you're right out there. You too are part of the AJC family. Now, I had the personal pleasure of meeting with Nina on many occasions, and we would discuss my thoughts, and then she would smile at me and explain her thoughts, and then she'd keep smiling and explain again, and then with that charm, her thoughts became my thoughts. And I always think of Nina with that feistiness, that charm, and that big smile, which made her so effective and such a pleasure to deal with. We at AJC are committed to continuing Nita's legacy. In her honor, we will elevate the leaders who embody her moral clarity and unwavering resolve. In that spirit, I am pleased to announce that AJC's Congressional Leadership Award will now be known as the AJC Nita M. Lowy Congressional Leadership Award. And now it is my honor to present this newly named award to its first recipient, someone who so clearly reflects Nita's values and legacy, and that's Congressman H.E. Torres. Seems like he has a few fans here. I actually was first introduced to Richie on an AJC Zoom call and called him up and invited him to come to lunch. And we had a wonderful discussion, and he did something that no politician has ever done. He actually wanted to clean up the plates before cleaning out my wallet. From the very beginning of his public service, Congressman Richie has been a fearless advocate for justice and a passionate friend of the Jewish people. At a time when moral courage matters more than ever, he has never wavered in standing up for truth and the values we share. Whether in his unwavering defense of the U.S.-Israel relationship, his vocal opposition to antisemitism in all of its forms, or his belief in the dignity and rights of all people, Richie leads with heart, with conviction, and with an unshakable sense of purpose. AJC is proud to work with leaders like Congressman Torres in the United States and around the world, and we are deeply grateful for his friendship and partnership. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Torres to this stage. Congressman, it's my distinct honor to present you with the inaugural AJC Nita M. Lowy Congressional Leadership Award. Mazel tov and congratulations, and I'm only slightly envious of your relative applause. The podium is yours.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Even though I cannot see you, I love you too. And John, I will wash your dishes anytime. I prefer washing dishes over doing laundry. So, but it is an honor to be here. You know, one of my mentors, who gave me my start in politics, got his start with Congresswoman Nita Lowy. And although I never had the honor of serving with the great Congresswoman, I am proud to call myself a Nita Lowy Democrat. Pro-America and pro-Israel. And please join me in conveying the greatest debt of gratitude to Nita's greatest legacy, which is her family. Of all the recognitions that I've received in my more than decade as a public servant, none has meant more to me than receiving an honor that bears the name of the great Congresswoman, and that comes from an organization that I respect and love so deeply, AJC. And I know that love is mutual. But even if the love were unrequited, and as a single man, I'm no stranger to unrequited love. But even if the love were unrequited, I would still love AJC. I have a deep and long relationship with AJC that dates back to my early years in the New York City Council. Speaking of my early years, a few days ago, I was approached by a constituent who said to me, "Congressman, you knocked on my door 10 years ago, and I thought you would be a typical politician who would never come back. But you came back, and you kept your word. But there's just one problem." And I asked, "What's the problem?" She said, "You've gained a little weight. You've gained about 10 pounds. So AJC has known me so long that it knew me when I was 10 pounds lighter." But AJC has been an unfailingly unifying force in a time of division and polarization. It's been an institutional voice of cool and calm reason in an age of red-hot passions. AJC plays the long game, refusing to be distracted by the pettiness and partisanship of our present politics. AJC believes, as I do, that America must remain exceptional here at home and abroad. And one of the greatest traditions of American exceptionalism is our nation's exceptional commitment to both the Jewish people and the Jewish state. A tradition that I am proud to uphold as a forceful and fearless Zionist in the United States Congress. As an ally, not Jewish, but Jewish, there's an expiration date on all my George Santos jokes, so As an ally, I pledge this to each and every one of you. I will never fall silent in the face of anti-Semitism. And I will always stand up and speak out with moral clarity at precisely the moments when it matters the most. There are many in America who are neither anti-Semitic nor anti-Zionist, but who are nonetheless morally confused about the causes of the war and the conflict. The dominant narrative in American media often portrays Israel as the greatest obstacle to peace. If only Israel had the right government, or if only Israel made the right concessions, the argument goes, peace would become possible. A two-state solution would become a reality. There's just one problem with that one-sided narrative. It's not true. The narrative is a lie of omission. It omits the most tragic truth of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that there's a genuinely genocidal, anti-Zionist, and yes, anti-Semitic ideology that demands nothing less than the extermination of Israel as a Jewish state and the eradication of Jews from the ancestral homeland. And that ideology incited October 7th. That ideology animates terrorist regimes like the Islamic Republic of Iran. And that ideology inspires terrorist organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, whose motto is death to Israel and death to America. There is no subtlety there. If you're an academic or an activist, a politician or a journalist, who is downplaying or even denying the genocidal ideology at the core of October 7th, then you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. An international community that subsidizes and an international media that sanitizes a genocidal ideology is not promoting Israeli-Palestinian peace, it is perpetuating the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The cruel irony of the so-called Free Palestine movement is that it does not free the Palestinians. It oppresses them. It is Orwellian oppression masquerading as liberation. Consider the contrast between how deeply Israelis value Israeli life and how deeply Hamas devalues Palestinian life. Throughout the world, the hearts of Israelis and Jews across the diaspora are breaking for the plights of the hostages who are suffering through modern-day slavery for more than 500 days. Every year at Passover, Jews recount the story of Exodus, the journey from bondage to freedom. The words, "Let my people go," have taken on new urgency at a time when Jews and Israelis are yearning for the day when the hostages will be set free. There is nothing that Jews and Israelis want more intensely than to see the hostages liberated, to see them emerge from the darkness of captivity into the light of freedom. That is what it means to value life. By contrast, Hamas sees Palestinians not as ends unto themselves, but as a means to an end, a means to the destruction of Israel. Instead of investing in homes, hospitals, and schools, Hamas built a sprawling network of terror tunnels so vast it rivals half of the New York City subway system. All that money and ingenuity that could have lifted up the Palestinian people were squandered on tearing down their Jewish neighbors. Jew hatred is an acid that corrodes the humanity of everyone and everything it touches. Recall the raw footage from October 7th. A Hamas terrorist bragging over the phone to his parents that he had murdered 10 Jews. To be a martyr, to die a shaheed, to murder a Jew is seen as not as something tragic, but as something heroic. I come here with a simple message. The glorification of Jew hatred has no place, should find no refuge in the new Middle East waiting to be born. The ideology of Jew hatred in the Middle East did not begin on October 7th. It did not begin in 1967. It did not even begin in 1948. The hatred for Jews in the land of Israel is older than the Jewish state itself, dating back to the Nebi Musa riots of 1920, the Hebron massacre of 1929, and the Great Arab Revolt of 1936, which has been described as the pre-Intifada, one of the precursors to terror events like the Second Intifada, a wave of suicide bombings and stabbings and shootings that murdered over 1,000 Israelis, and derailed the peace process. October 7th did not happen in a vacuum. It was the continuation of a century-long cycle of violence and terror against Jews in Israel. That critical context is rarely explained to the American people by the American media. Golda Meir was right. If the other side laid down its arms, there would be peace. But if Israel laid down its arms, there would be no Israel. And that tragic truth is rarely explained to the American people by the American media. There is an alternative to this history of hate that began with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem and continues with the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. There is an alternative vision of shared peace and prosperity, of common humanity and dignity. And that vision is the Abraham Accords. The Islamic Republic's empire of terror is crumbling in real time. Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, all shadows of their former selves. The Assad regime in Syria has collapsed, and Iran's defenses have been degraded. The future of the Middle East does not belong to the Islamic Republic and its empire of terror. The future of the Middle East belongs to Israel and the Abraham Accords. The future of the Middle East does not belong to hate. The future belongs to hope, Hatikva. In the grand sweep of history, in the millennia-long Maccabean marathon that is the story of the Jewish people, we are as close as we have ever been to realizing the Abrahamic dream of a world where all the children of Abraham, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, can coexist in peace and prosperity. A durable peace is possible. And we, as Americans, in the greatest country on earth, have the power, indeed the responsibility, to make it so. And make peace we will. God bless the United States of America. Am Israel. Hi. Thank you.
One more round of applause for my good friend Richie Torres. Richie is always an inspiration. These particular remarks were spot on. They were important. We are grateful. And I am so proud to congratulate Richie on this very well-deserved award. I am especially thrilled that Congressman Torres is the first recipient of the Needham Lowy Congressional Leadership Award. And I know that Steve and Dana and David and Daniel, who were so honored to have with us, agree that there could be no finer initial recipient than Richie. Richie was a dear friend and an unbelievable friend and ally of the Jewish people. And Nita, someone that I turn to always for guidance, for insight, someone who was such a champion for our people, will be so dearly missed by all of us, and I'm so, so very proud that we will be able to honor her every single year here at Global Forum. In November, I was in Brazil with a group of AJC leaders with our Belfer Institute for Latino and Latin American Affairs. And I met our next speaker, a principled pro-Israel progressive. Sounds like Richie Torres. Tabata Amaral, a member of the Chamber of Deputies of Brazil, at just 31 years of age, has already served more than 6 years in the chamber. She has been a great friend to the Jewish community. AJC had the privilege of bringing her to Israel through AJC Project Interchange, our really incredible program that brings global opinion leaders and policymakers to Israel to see firsthand the complexity and the beauty of Israel through their own eyes. And whether in Washington, in New York, with Richie, in Brazil, with Tabata, or with the 108 countries that AJC engages, we are so proud to work with leaders in government to advance policies that strengthen the Jewish people, Israel, and allow democracies to thrive. Today, I'm proud to welcome to the stage one such ally. Please join me in welcoming Tabata Amaral.
Good morning, bom dia. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here and to follow Representative Torres, a colleague whose story resonates deeply with mine. We are both young legislators, shaped by hardship and determined to expand the promise of justice in our countries. Like Mr. Torres, I consider my first visit to Israel at the invitation of the American Jewish Committee Project Interchange with the Jewish Federation of São Paulo and CONIBI, a life-changing experience. My first visit took place less than a month before the October 7th terrorist attacks, which horrified me and deepened my solidarity with the Jewish community. Like Mr. Torres, I believe a two-state solution, however distant it may seem, is essential to guarantee the self-determination of both Israeli and Palestinian peoples. That means supporting not a specific government, but the fundamental right of democratic states to exist, and, above all, the right of their peoples to live safe and to live in peace. Thank you. I also share with him the strange experience of having to explain, often within our own political circles, why combating anti-Semitism is not a distraction from my political commitments, but central to them. There is a perception, sometimes whispered, sometimes declared, that being committed to justice, especially in the Global South, is somehow at odds with defending Jewish communities or the people of Israel from hatred and exclusion. I reject that idea. There is no contradiction. It is not despite being a progressive, but because I am one, that I made a point of being here today with you all. The modern struggle for justice draws on many traditions, labor movements, anti-racist struggles, feminist and decolonial thought, and yes, a profound legacy of Jewish experience and intellectual leadership. These are not opposing forces. They are overlapping sources of moral insight and democratic urgency. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which I regard as the most important political document of the 20th century, was born from the words reckoning with the Holocaust. It represents a collective admission of failure, the failure to protect the Jewish people, and the failure to grasp how quickly hatred, when ignored, can erode the foundations of our common life. Jewish survivors, thinkers, and scholars helped give meaning to that document, not only in law, but in ethics and politics. One of them, Hannah Arendt, found refuge in American universities. Her writing, shaped by personal loss and philosophical clarity, helped define our understanding of power, evil, and what she called our right to have rights. And yet, despite the lessons of the past, anti-Semitism persists and has resurged. In Brazil, a recent study showed a 350% increase in reports of anti-Semitism since October 7th. My home state of São Paulo, home to half of Brazil's Jewish population, has seen disturbing cases in schools and universities. And these are not isolated events. A 2022 study revealed the presence of over 500 extremist cells across Brazil, with neo-Nazi groups growing by 270% in just 3 years. This is not just a Brazilian problem. Anti-Semitic attacks are on the rise across Europe, Latin America, and the United States. Even American universities, which once gave shelter to scholars like Arendt, have seen such attacks multiply, creating environments where many Jewish students and faculty no longer feel safe. This reality is deeply troubling and demands action. What saddens me the most is that so few voices from the progressive field in Brazil are speaking out. This should not be a partisan issue. Fighting anti-Semitism is not a political strategy. It shouldn't be. It's a moral obligation. It belongs to all of us. And just as we must stand firmly against anti-Semitism, we must also resist its instrumentalization. Today, we see legitimate concerns for Jewish safety being misused to curtail academic freedom and bend institutions into compliance with political agendas. Let's be honest. Let's be honest, such efforts do not build solidarity, they erode it. If we want Jewish students to feel truly safe, and I do want that, we must strengthen these institutions, not hollow them out. We must then hold complexity, not demand conformity. They need our help in that. In times like these, it's tempting to choose sides quickly, to reduce people to labels, to silence those who dissent. But real courage lies elsewhere, in standing with those who suffer, in defending the right to speak and to question, and insisting that dignity is not reserved for a few, but guaranteed for all. That's the vision I carry with me, a world where justice wears no jersey, where rights are not weapons, and where the pursuit of peace and equality is not a test of ideology, but a basic responsibility of leadership. Thank you very much.
the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians.
This genocide is unfolding in the Gaza Strip.
Tonight, the International Criminal Court issuing arrest warrants for Israel's prime minister.
Really now accusing Israel of violating those ceasefire agreements, but certainly...
I'm not Israeli, I'm not Jewish, but it became a clear understanding. All the things that are being said, there were lies like that before, but they'd never stuck, and then just fire poured on them globally because it's Israel. On the ground in Gaza, watching the IDF, they cut civilian casualties to where now it's at an abnormally low for even combat in general. There's actually not been one actual case of the Israeli Defense Forces targeting civilians. The UN is failing. This has been the greatest test of the United Nations since the end of World War II. You have people like the New York Times who don't understand the laws of war.
Please welcome Chair of AJC's Board of Governors, Bobby Lapin.
Everyone. As this plenary illustrates so clearly, we here at AJC believe that moral courage is defined not by convenience, but by conviction, by the willingness to speak the truth, especially when doing so is difficult, unpopular, or in some cases even dangerous. With that understanding in mind, we will now have the opportunity to honor and to learn from someone who exemplifies precisely that measure of courage and who unhesitatingly puts himself out there on the front lines of the fight for truth. I speak of John Spencer. As you've seen, John is one of the world's leading experts on urban warfare. He has spent his career studying the complexities and the consequences of modern conflict, not just the tactics and the terrain, but the profound human cost. As such, John understands war, not in abstract terms, but in reality, messy, painful, and deeply consequential. And it is precisely because of that expertise that John has become such a necessary and valued voice in today's conversations about Israel and its self-defensive war in Gaza. In the face of relentless misinformation, deliberate distortion, and accusations, John has emerged as a fierce defender and champion of truth. He's used his knowledge, his platform, and his credibility to speak clearly and unapologetically about the unprecedented challenges which Israel faces in defending its people. He has highlighted and explained what most choose to ignore, that Hamas has deliberately embedded itself in civilian areas, that the IDF is held to a standard to which no other military is held, and that morality in war is not just about restraint, it's about responsibility. As part of our efforts to defend Israel and the Jewish people in the aftermath of October 7th, AJC has harnessed our global communications platforms to do our best to set the record straight for both the public and for the leaders with whom we engage with regard to the situation on the ground in Israel and in Gaza. And with regard to our concerns, of course, about rising anti-Semitism. Believe me, we, and I mean all of us, know all too well how difficult the information warfare battle is. And for that reason, among many others, we could not be more grateful to be able to count on allies like John Spencer to stand alongside us in this consequential fight for hearts and minds. In a moment, John will join AJC's Chief Impact and Operations Officer, Casey Custom, in a conversation about these vital issues and the convictions which guide him and the realities that we all must confront together. But first, let us take a moment to honor John, to honor him for his remarkable knowledge of his craft, for his insistence that the truth not be muddied in the name of political expediency, and during a moment of world history when it seems to be in frighteningly short supply too often elsewhere, for his unabashed moral courage. Please join me in welcoming John Spencer to the AJC Global Forum stage. John, on behalf of all of us at AJC, I want to thank you for your integrity, for your moral clarity, and for your voice. You remind us all that speaking the truth, while never a neutral act, is always a necessary one. It is my distinct, personal, and career privilege to be able to present you with AJC's Moral Courage Award. We'll come stand over here on this X over here.
John, congratulations, and thanks so much for being here. Before we get into questions, better? We're good? Okay. John, I want to just give you a moment to react to what you just heard, the reception you've received from this crowd.
I'd say I'm speechless, but I don't think I'm allowed to be. A true, really lifetime honor, and almost also a sadness that speaking the truth is something unique, and having the courage to speak with the truth that you know. So I'm deeply honored. It's amazing to be here, and I can't thank you enough.
Since October 7th, you have been one of the staunchest defenders, as we just heard, of Israel's military operations in Gaza. But tell us how you came to choose to do this work. Was it strictly from a professional point of view and your expertise in this area, or was there something personal motivating you as well?
Yeah, so it's definitely both. Professionally, of course, I had the unique knowledge, which some people might have viewed as useless before we come to this time. 10 years of studying just urban warfare. With great knowledge comes great responsibility, but it did become personal. I was 25 years in the military, basically re-raised in the military with values like duty, service, courage as part of the key of who I am. But now I have young children, and I'm trying to raise them with certain values. And I don't want to live in a world where the truth doesn't matter and that people don't have the courage to stand up for the truth.
As you can tell from the reception you're receiving this morning, it means so much to the Jewish community around the world, to the people of Israel, to have allies like you in this fight. And showing moral courage is not something that we take for granted. And we know that it can sometimes come with personal risk and professional risk. What has been the response that you have received from colleagues in the military profession? Have you received personal backlash?
Yeah, I've definitely received backlash, and not all good attention is good intention. I've had people try to get me fired. I've had people write to my employer trying to get me fired. I've had a very big newspaper, New York Times, basically after the Prime Minister mentioned my name in his address to Congress, mentioned my research. They decided, well, let's decredit, remove the authority of John Spencer, and they assigned somebody for a year to dig into every amount of my personal, professional life to try to discredit me. And I don't know if they're planning to try harder, but what I say to anybody, and there's a quote about don't argue with stupid people, they'll bring you down to their level and beat you with experience. But I stand by my information, and I can argue with anybody because everybody can have their own opinions. They can't have their own facts.
So let's talk a little bit about misinformation, because in addition to actual warfare that Israel is engaged in, we are all fighting an information war. So much of what we see in the media, in the press, on social media in particular, truly is a mischaracterization of what's actually happening on the ground. Can you help us understand where the drivers of this misinformation come from, and are there particular instances that you see online that are just particularly egregious?
Well, I spend a lot of time online, probably too much, as you know, attacking the largest amounts of disinformation, which sometimes have a kernel of truth and sometimes are just fiction. And I saw that start, going back to why I do this. I've lost friends because of my advocacy for the truth, and that happens to be advocacy for Israel, because I do believe they're doing everything that, more than anybody in the history of war, to protect civilians, in this case an enemy civilian, to include feeding the enemy's population. But I actually lost friends on October 7th, so there are friends that matter and those that are no longer friends. I can't give you, there's such a long list. I started seeing the lies on October 8th, like Gaza is the densest place on earth. Look, I study cities for a living. Somebody hasn't been traveled the world if they think that. There's places around the world. There's not even a top 100. But then it started with what I say in my world, there's 3 types of lies. Lies, damn lies, and statistics. So I had to start, at first I fought fire with fire, like, look, if you want to go into numbers, I know where the bodies are hidden, literally. I know the numbers, and this came to this, and I actually got told last month that, hey, you're the ratio guy. You're the civilian to combatant ratio guy, right? Like, no, that's not me. I actually know, again, from studying war, that no other nation has been asked, despite all the context, yeah, but what's your civilian to combatant ratio? Nobody. So this is where I've come to realize, although I have seen, and why I'm such a champion for the truth, is that I've seen anti-Semitism being cloaked in everything. I've seen anti-Israel, anti-Zionism being cloaked in lies, damn lies, and statistics. So the problem being, though, is that nobody knows what any of these numbers mean. And that's where you can take the number and make it whatever you want it to be. And that's another really fascinating book, but where figures don't lie, but liars sure do figure. So this is the number, no matter what it is, no matter who's giving the number, it means Israel is in the wrong. And I've seen this play out in reality, right? So Natan Sharansky's, first a double standard, delegitimize, demonize. I've seen that in spades. But I actually don't think what I write about, what I talk about is that this is crazy. This isn't a double standard. This is an Israeli standard in war. Like this question of what is your civilian to combatant ratio? This is what the law, redefining genocide, redefining war crimes, all of this stuff. And I'm standing in the door saying, no, that's not right.
From your experience, in the United States military, from your deep knowledge of urban warfare and international law, you approach this, as you just said, from truly a fact-based, research-based, statistic-based approach. And so much of this conversation ends up with an emotional reaction and ignores the facts. For all of us who are engaged every day on the ground in our communities, we're never going to have the level of expertise that you have, but how can we better arm ourselves to be advocates?
I would say read what I write, but I think everybody...
No doubt everyone does.
That's right. Because it is hard to quickly identify where the fact is in that kernel of truth, and then the inference, the correlation, the lie, the narrative. Where I have chosen to start fighting people online who aren't experts, and for some reason expert has become a bad thing, but where they're redefining words like morality. It's been crazy. To arm, I often get this question, like what's the short one-pager that I can arm myself with? There's so many variations of what's going on versus the reality of actually being there. And I actually also agree that a lot of people have these emotional, like you can't convince them otherwise, ideals about Israel and Gaza, although they've never been. They never looked across a field and seen Gaza. They've never been in Far Gaza and looked across a field and seen where more Gazan civilians cross the wire to commit atrocities than actual Hamas. They don't know these things. I mean, within my realm of war, of course, there's a long list of, like the civilian to combatant ratio, stop playing that, that's not how war works, or any other number that's effects-based. The fact that it doesn't matter what Israel does. It doesn't matter that Israel's done more to prevent civilian harm than any military in history. John, look at these pictures. Look at these figures. Look at these numbers. That's not how war works. Or even Hamas, to characterize Hamas as something different than what it is or what it says. It actually, in its charter, in its multiple charters, it doesn't just want the destruction of Israel and the death of Jewish people in Israel. It wants the death of Jewish people around the world. And this leads to what's his strategy, but also his tactics. So another thing that I like to highlight to everybody that seems to forget is that since October 7th, but also before that, if you've ever studied the history of Hamas, Hamas does not deploy a human shield strategy. Hamas deploys a human sacrifice strategy. Everything it's done in Gaza in its approach to destroying Israel and killing the Jewish people is to sacrifice its population. Everything it says and everything it does, it built Gaza for war. Billions of dollars, 400 miles of tunnels, and I also point out that you know that every of the 2 million people in Gaza, all of them could fit in Hamas's tunnels with ease. But not one of them is allowed. Because Hamas says and acts, it actually says this, I need the death of my women, children, elderly, all of them, to achieve in the afterlife my goal. So that human shield versus human sacrifice strategy. But the list is so long of just straightforward, like, this is crazy. How have we turned into a world where the victim becomes the aggressor? Where no matter what the other side says, it doesn't matter. They have these ideals about what should happen. Just like the ceasefire now. Ceasefire now would be, you want the war to continue forever. Just a cycle of violence.
So let's talk a little bit about the current military strategy and operations in Gaza. Do you think the current strategy is working? Where do you see this going? And in terms of other threats in the region to Israel, whether it be from Hezbollah or the Iranian threat, what do you assess as the most critical needs for the Israeli military at this moment?
That's a hard one. So as a war analyst, as a war researcher, that's what I do. So if I was to analyze how's the war going for both sides? Hamas no longer has a military. Hamas struggles to maintain power. That isn't from trying. The strategy moving forward and actually understanding what came before, even since October 7th, is what has Israel been allowed to do? And from unfortunate statements like the correct number of civilian casualties in this war is 0. That was a call for Israel to be defeated, in my opinion. Don't go to Rafah, where the leadership is, where the hostages are. I understand that war is the pursuit of political goals. It's always fought in both an internal political environment, but an international and global political environment. So the biggest challenge for the IDF right now, although Hamas's military has been dismantled, it had this vast military of over 30 to 50,000 fighters, 5 brigades, 20,000 rockets, the ability to hold ground and do attacks. It doesn't have that anymore. Yes, it has a lot of radicalized. The average age of a new Hamas recruit is 16 and a half. So yeah, it has a lot of radicalized people that will join and form this guerrilla force. The biggest challenge, though, to get to your question, is will. Right? War is a contest of will. And people think it's just between the two militaries, and it is that. You're trying to convince your enemy to do what you want it to do, like surrender, stop holding hostages, all these things. But it's also a contest of will politically, and we've seen that play out since October 7th, where you've had national leaders parroting Hamas's numbers or parroting false information, which is really problematic, while Israel has also been attacked on 7 different fronts. So to talk about the strategy against Hamas, you can't talk that without talking about how Israel dismantled and did to Hezbollah in a matter of weeks, showing the power of Israel and what it did for the Islamic regime in Iran's circle of fire around Israel, how it's made the Middle East safer, all of this. But it really comes down to the will of the people. So like the Israeli society, and this happens in war as well, like, look, the cost has been too much. In war, you have to maintain the will of the people. So for the IDF, the tactics, the IDF have proven to do the unthinkable, and from somebody who studies war, multiple times, to include in Gaza, the ability to separate the population, kill Hamas fighters, kill or capture. It's been, unimaginable, which is really Israel's military history. But the biggest challenge is the people understanding what it will take, right? This is the ideal. You can't defeat an ideology, right? So I study wars, and that's not true. Come on. That's like saying I want to pull the German population while I defeat the Nazis, and you can't defeat them this way. It's the misapplication of frameworks. I absolutely think that Hamas can be defeated, that the Gazan population can be de-radicalized. I also think that anti-Semitism in the United States, for us, can be depowered, a light shown on it, and remove it from its power. And that's war, right? We're at war with anti-Semitism. Israel is at war with Hamas. It can absolutely be defeated, its weapons taken, and it be de-radicalized. But that takes time and it takes resources.
So we're all engaged. We're all engaged in this war against anti-Semitism. And we often feel like, I think, as American Jews, that we are shouting into the void at times. What advice would you give to everyone in this room on how to hold on to that sense of purpose in this fight, drawing on your background in the U.S. military and the values that have been instilled in you for 25 years in your career? How can we hold on to that sense of purpose and drive in this fight?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as I visited Israel quickly after October 7th, and as I visited the IDF soldiers in Gaza, they don't question why they're doing what they do and why they're doing it with moral and ethical conviction, protecting civilians, is that they can see their homes behind them. They can see the rockets from Hamas that land inside Gaza often. They can see them going over their heads and headed towards their homes. There's no question on why they're fighting and that they will continue to fight until the job's done. I think the same is here for us. The number one thing I tell anybody is fight. We all have to fight. A single candle in the darkness can light a room.
John, from all of us here at AJC, we are so grateful to have you as an ally in this fight. We have felt as a community that very few friends have been willing to stand by us, and today's program is proving us, hopefully proving us wrong, that we do have friends and allies in this fight. Thank you so much from the bottom of all of our hearts.
Please welcome co-chair and director of AJC's Belfer Institute for Latino and Latin American Affairs, Tony Meyer and Dina Siegel-Van.
Good morning. Buenos dias. This year marks the 20th anniversary of AJC's Arthur and Rochelle Belfer Institute for Latino and Latin American Affairs. For 2 decades, BILA has worked tirelessly to strengthen the bonds between the Jewish community and Latin America, advancing shared values of democracy, human rights, and mutual understanding. As we reflect on our progress, we're also reminded that the Western Hemisphere continues to face challenges that demand collective action, and that AJC's leadership and engagement in the region are more vital than ever, and a critical part of our global advocacy on behalf of the Jewish people. 31 years after the attack on the AMIA Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, Latin America continues to confront a world where democratic values are under assault and terrorism remains a clear and present danger. Despite serious challenges, governments and societies in the region have remained grounded in democracy and human rights. Minority communities, including vibrant Jewish populations across the Americas, have benefited from a climate of inclusiveness and respect. But the rise of anti-Semitism following October 7th made confronting both anti-Semitism and terrorism a regional priority. Tragically, many global leaders were silent or worse, amplified dangerous false narratives. Tony?
One leader who has stood out is Paraguay's President Santiago Peña. President Peña has shown unwavering support for Israel and the Jewish people during these challenging times, continuing a proud tradition in Paraguay dating back to 1848. President Peña has endorsed his country's designation of Hamas and Hezbollah as terrorist organizations. And a few days ago, in a landmark decision, he declared the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps a terrorist entity as well. The first nation to do so in Latin America. He has spoken out also clearly against those who distort Israel's actions and misrepresent its fight against terror and racism. In December of 2024, accompanied by top advisors and Jewish community leaders, he traveled to Israel to reopen Paraguay's embassy in Jerusalem, Israel's eternal capital. That is a powerful and unmatched act of friendship. Many of us were honored to hear President Peña speak at last year's commemoration of the 30th anniversary of the AMIA bombing in Buenos Aires. His words of solidarity with the Jewish people then and his condemnation of extremism were very powerful and deeply moving. And very importantly, and news to many of us, and perhaps to you as well, he told us then that Paraguay has also experienced a war of extermination and genocide in 1864 during the tri-nation alliance war, when it was attacked by Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, in a war that became a war of extermination and genocide against the Paraguayan country and the Paraguayan people. We had never learned that, and this is what President Peña told us, and he'll reference that in his remarks today. And he has told us several times that that experience is part of the Paraguayan mindset, in their heart, that compels him not to stay silent while Israel is being attacked. He's off stage. We'll be here in a second. Mr. President, AJC deeply values your principled leadership, your steadfast allyship, and your moral clarity. And it is a true honor to present you today on behalf of AJC and its Belfer Institute for Latino and Latin American Affairs with our Gesher Award. We have today a lithograph by renowned Israeli artist Gad Malicha. It's inspired by the words of Rabbi Nachman of Bratislava, a revered Talmudic sage who lived in 18th century Poland. The rabbi said, "The world is a very narrow bridge, and what is important is not to be afraid." That metaphor resonates deeply today, reminding us that humanity walks a fragile path, one that requires balance, mutual support, and unwavering courage. We're all connected on this bridge, and its stability depends on our collective resolve to uphold truth, justice, and dignity for all. In presenting you with this artwork, President Peña, we're not only honoring your leadership, but also entrusting you with a symbol of the resilience and hope that unites our communities. Voices like yours inspire us to strengthen what unites us and to pursue understanding and coexistence rooted in our shared humanity. Congratulations, President Peña, and Mazel Tov, and may you and your Paraguayan people go from strength to the strength. After receiving the award, President Peña will join our own Dina Siegel-Van for a conversation about his leadership and the future of Israel-Paraguay relations. And it is now my great honor to welcome President Santiago Peña of Paraguay to the AJC Global Forum stage.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Felicidades.
Merecidas.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor and privilege to stand before you in this great organization today to receive this award which you have so generously and kindly have chosen to bestow upon me. I am deeply humbled by the gesture of genuine friendship and generosity. I received this award not because of any personal merit, which I don't have, but as a symbol of the profound political, emotional, and spiritual ties that exist between the Jewish people and Paraguay. I am convinced that no nation, no culture, no religious heritage has shaped and influenced Western civilization as profoundly as the Jewish people. For more than 4,000 years, your people has built, generation after generation, the most enduring and meaningful ideas of our civilization. These contributions have helped preserve humanity, particularly through the profound moral and philosophical principles that continue to guide us. So let me begin by saying the most simple, yet at the same time most powerful words that any human being can say. Thank you very much. I want to celebrate today the enduring and historical friendship between the people of the great nations of Paraguay and Israel. I'm convinced that there exists an indestructible bond between Paraguay and the Jewish people, a bond that is built not upon mere political convenience or expediency, but upon our shared commitment to principles that transcend space and time, principles like peace, justice, and sovereignty of nations. But above all, the principle of solidarity and true brotherhood. Paraguay has been one of the countries that has most vigorously stood beside Israel after the criminal, weak, and cowardly attacks of October 7, 2023. This atrocious act that claimed the life of over 1,400 innocent people, including individuals from more than 20 countries, was not only an assault on Israel, but on humanity itself. Today, in the name of David Schwarzman, an Israeli Paraguayan who was killed that day, and of the innocent men, women, and children who remain in captivity, held criminally hostage by Hamas, I stand before you to say to this victim that we do not forget them, and that we condemn with all of our heart those miserable hands, full of hatred and violence. To these criminals, we come here to say, you have not won. No. Hate is not stronger than love. Violence is not stronger than peace. Barbarism is not stronger than humanity. Cowards, know that you will be defeated. It is in the most difficult and trying times that we come to know the value of our true friends, of our real brothers and sisters. Everyone is a friend when things go smoothly, when the weather is fair. But we are living truly decisive days. These are not time for timid, for the lukewarm. This is the reason why in December of last year I took the decision to move the Paraguayan embassy in Israel to the eternal capital of Jerusalem. Precisely when the world seems to once again abandon Israel, forget the Jewish brethren, when everyone seems to be turning their back on this country, Paraguay is here to say, we are with you, our dear friends. We will not abandon Israel. There is so much truth in Ella and Leib Levinsky's words. Without Jerusalem, the land of Israel is a body without a soul. I believe that without an embassy in Jerusalem, diplomatic relations with Israel do not have a real heart, do not have a real soul. With this move, our historic friendship will once again have a palpitating heart. It is also a decision that I sincerely hope will inspire other nations to do the same. However significant the decision to move the embassy to Jerusalem is only one more link in the rich and profound history of friendship between Israel and Paraguay. This long relationship goes back to at least 1947. In that year, Paraguay was proud to cast one of the decisive votes in favor of United Nations Resolution 181, which established the modern state of Israel, a land of milk and honey, as Exodus prophesied. From this moment on, our two nations have been united in a true spirit of friendship and brotherhood, which has stood the test of time and the ever-changing political, diplomatic, and cultural movement. But you may legitimately ask, why are two countries that are geographically so far away one from each other, that on the surface are so different, that have so diverse history, have such a strong and unique bond? Despite these superficial differences, I'm convinced that there are few countries in the world that can understand Israel better than Paraguay. Although many of you may not know this, Paraguay people share the great tradition of the Jewish people of understanding the ideas of adversity and sacrifice. Of course, no people on the face of this earth have endured so much persecution, so much violence, so much injustice as the Jewish people. No words, no historical chronicle can fully describe the trials and tribulations that you have suffered. Yet, at the same time, this fight against adversity and the concept of sacrifice embodies so much of the greatness of these nations and of many of gifts to humanity. Paraguay's path has also seen its shares of hardship, suffering, and resilience. Just as the children of Israel were guided by Moses in search of the Promised Land, Paraguay too has faced its own particular kind of exodus, of wandering, difficulty, and struggle to survive. Paraguay was once the most prosperous and developed country in South America back in the 19th centuries, as well as a zealous defender of its independence. This created an homogeneous population with strong social ties and a very unique sense of identity. However, Paraguay, like Israel is today, lives in a very rough and complicated vicinity. Our giant and powerful neighbors, Brazil and Argentina, united together with Uruguay, signed a secret treaty, the Treaty of the Triple Alliance, or of the Triple Infamy, as the Argentinian jurist Alberti, censoring his own government, famously called it. Also drafted in euphemistic terms, the real object of this treaty was none other than the total extermination of the Paraguayan people and the elimination of our country from this earth. The Allies together were immensely superior in territory, in military weapons, and in manpower. Yet, they failed to fully understand the soul of the Paraguayan people, so attached to their nation and the values of adversity and sacrifice. The chief commander of the Triple Alliance, Bartolomé Mitre, bragged at the beginning of the war that the troops will be in 24 hours to the barracks, in 15 days to the campaign, in 3 months to Asunción, our own capital. However, the Allies were disappointed, to say the least, when their plan took more than 6 years of brave fighting and resilience by Paraguayans, who managed to save their homeland from complete extermination. In the end, nevertheless, the consequences of the war were truly disastrous. Nearly 90%, 90, of the Paraguayan male population was killed. Two-thirds of the population were either decimated or made prisoner. We lost 60% of the territory. Our industry and commerce were destroyed, and our development halted for over a century. One Brazilian author, extremely critical of his country's deeds, even called the war the South American genocide. Thus, as president of Paraguay, I can look you in the eye and say that the Paraguayan people can understand the adversities, the injustices, the great sacrifices that your people face every day. We know what it's like to live in a neighborhood that wants you to be eliminated. It is this same sense of identity that leads us today to support the State of Israel's legitimate claim to Jerusalem as its capital city, and to defend its territory and people from any invader or external threat. Today, all Paraguayans can say, we understand you, we are with you. In sum, both Paraguay and Israel may be small nations geographically, but spiritually, they have shown to be giants when facing adversity. Moreover, our two nations understand the transformative power of sacrifice, resilience, and hope. We are friends in some, because we share the same values. The brilliant Jewish thinker Hannah Arendt traced the origins of so much of the violence of modernity to a common root, that most hateful ideology of anti-Semitism. I have to confess here that I have never understood how so many people have adopted this horrible worldview, given that the Jewish people has given so much materially, culturally, and spiritually to the entire world. And yet, sadly, this evil perversion is still very strong, as you all know. Today, we see with deep concern an increase in anti-Semitism in all of its forms at a global level. This manifests itself not only in violent acts against the Jewish people, but also in a distortion of facts, which seeks to deny Israel's legitimate right to take measures to preserve its own existence. At the height of the anti-Semitism in the 20th century, when the Nazi barbarian seems unstoppable and triumphal, the great Argentinian writer Jorge Luis Borges stood among the anti-Semites to chorously say, "Yo judío, I am Jewish." So today, let me say that to the whole world, that for every act of anti-Semitism, every Paraguayan will respond unequivocally, "Nosotros judíos, we are Jews." Thank you. I'm finishing. Thank you. Thank you. Let me close these remarks once again by thanking you for this unique privilege. Let it shine as a great token symbolizing the friendship between the Jewish people and Paraguay. But before leaving you, please tolerate me one final reflection. Trying to come to terms with the unspeakable evil of the Holocaust, of the Shoah, the German-born Jewish philosopher Theodor Adorno said that it was impossible to write poetry after Auschwitz. Indeed, it seemed that no word, no literary form can fully describe the unnameable cruelty of those deeds. Witnessing the degree of inhumanity achieved by the Nazi barbarism, Adorno seems to have lost any hope in the future. Today, there are still many great challenges faced by the people of Israel. There are extremely trying days ahead, and I understand that this may lead many others to lose hope. And yet, I'm very hopeful for Israel, for its people, and for its future. I'm convinced that Israel and the great Jewish nation will not only endure, they shall prevail. Shalom. I'm sorry that I took, I know, you told me. Thank you.
Mr. President, you've said it all. So we want to thank you for this invaluable opportunity to get our audience to get to know you and your admirable country. We wish you and the Paraguayan nation only the best and look forward to continue working together with you and with like-minded countries for a better future, for a peaceful world, and for a safe Jewish community in Israel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Please welcome AJC Executive Council member Lisa Pruzan.
Good morning. Like countless others among you, I've watched with alarm as educational institutions have too often become hostile environments where Jewish students are marginalized, silenced, and unsafe, both in the classroom and on the quad. Education is critical to the health and success of any society. Schools are spaces that should foster critical thinking, viewpoint diversity, and mutual respect. But all too frequently, those principles don't apply to Jews and Israel. Like our broader society, schools have become polarized spaces where nuanced understanding and rigorous debate have been replaced with simplistic narratives and echo chambers. Despite well-intentioned efforts to promote inclusivity, those efforts often exclude Jews, leaving Jewish students and faculty feeling unwelcome and intimidated. Launched last year, AJC's Center for Education Advocacy has a bold, multi-tiered approach that is providing a powerful response to these challenges. Our work begins in K-12 spaces and extends through universities, colleges, and graduate schools. We provide sustained, thoughtful, and constructive engagement with administrators and faculty. We empower and train the next generation of Jewish advocates, both at the high school and college levels. We monitor and advocate on education policy issues, and we train parents to be empowered, effective advocates for their children. We're very busy. With all of that in mind, key questions remain. How do we fix this? How can we ensure our educational institutions truly include and protect Jewish students? Today, we are fortunate to be joined by two distinguished leaders who are committed to finding solutions. Colette Coleman is the Vice Provost for Student Affairs at George Washington University. She is a distinguished leader in higher education who has been at the forefront of creating inclusive campus environments. And Dr. Tom Kelly is head of school at Horace Mann, one of the country's most prestigious independent schools, serving students from nursery through 12th grade. Tom is a passionate advocate for building educational communities that prioritize understanding, empathy, and critical dialogue. They are both also alumni of AJC Project Interchange delegations to Israel. Moderating today's discussion is Dr. Laura Shaw-Frank, who directs AJC's Center for Education Advocacy. Together, they will help us understand how schools can intentionally build Jewish inclusive educational communities, communities committed to critical thinking, brave conversations, and genuine empathy. Please join me in welcoming Colette Coleman, Dr. Tom Kelly, and Dr. Laura Shaw-Frank.
Tom and Colette, it's wonderful to be here with both of you. We've spent a lot of time together on multiple continents. This is true. I'm just going to dive right in and start with the hard question. What challenges did you face on your campuses in the aftermath of October 7th, and how did you address them? I'm going to start with you, Tom.
As you know firsthand, because we reached out to you for support once we got our bearing, fear, misinformation, disinformation, the adults now feeling the cancel culture like our kids navigate today, real unsteady, uncharted waters, which was surprising as an educator given the tremendous success the independent schools have had in building inclusive, rich, diverse tapestries of kids. I'm proud to be a leader of a school that, in fact, our Jewish families led the Difference Initiative. In fact, our 54% diverse today is because our Jewish families not only funded the work, they gave up seats for it to occur. But in the midst of the political free-for-all, in the midst of the fear, in the midst of the shock, there was almost a numbness And I think you had to lean into it the same way you tell our kids to, and you had to believe in your school's mission and vision and your community's ability to figure it out. For us, as you know, we lean heavily on scholarship because that's what our kids respect.
Colette.
So, oh, that's loud. I think you're aware because we've all been in conversations since October 7th. I think for especially in the college space, it was a very hard time. Yeah. I think it was disturbingly hard for our community, and it was a community that you started to see the fissures and the tensions that split people apart. When I think about things that students have advocated for in previous to October 7th, it was almost like a culmination of people coming together for a particular cause. This was the first time that I saw the community completely internally divided and split and broken apart. And that was really challenging to watch, as you know, because we started the work prior to October 7th. We understood that there was a gap in information, understanding of cultures and people, and not just about the complexion of your skin, but really just around your lived experience as a human, right? And so we started that work prior to October 7th. I believe it was the first time I had you come to campus was January, right?
Yes,
it was
that's
January
right.
of 2023 to train all of our staff on what anti-Semitism, what it is, how it looks, how it shows up, what the language is that's used. And we started that work in January. We then engaged again in August during our orientation program. I think that August was the first August that we had our orientation program be mandatory for all incoming first-year students to learn about anti-Semitism. And that was pre-October 7th. I wish that we had time for things to have taken root before October 7th happened. So we started that work with the incoming first-year class of the training, of the education, of the awareness, but we didn't have time for things to really stick, so we didn't get to the upper class levels before October 7th happened. And so we had a campus that was divided.
That's actually a perfect segue to my next question for you, which is about those tough conversations. We at AJC have always been proponents of brave conversations in education spaces. We want students to be able to express themselves openly and be heard with empathy and with curiosity, and also listen to ideas that might make them uncomfortable, because that's an important thing in education. And both of you have sort of been the exemplars of fostering exactly those types of brave conversations in your school spaces, even before October 7th, as we discussed. And I was at GW doing that, and I was also at Horace Mann doing that. So I'm wondering, since both of you have emphasized this so much in your school spaces, if you could share with us why you think courageous conversations are so important in countering anti-Semitism, and then how have you elevated them since October 7th, given the incredible tension that you both expressed existed on your campus? And I'll start with you, Colette.
Yeah. So I think we have to lean in to these courageous conversations, and they're not going to be comfortable for everyone. And I think we have to be willing to ask the hard questions and to say the things that sometimes people don't want to say or feel uncomfortable saying. I think for our student, when I think about our student population, so this will be we're in our third year now of incoming first-year classes having at least a grounding, a baseline of what anti-Semitism is, right? So we're doing that. So this will be year 3. And I say it takes 4 years to change culture. And so you just have to keep at it, and you got to keep going. You can't just do something for 1 year and then stop, or just because it's the highlight of the moment or in the news at the moment. Like, if you're committed to something, even in the hard times, you got to stay committed to that. So this will be year 3 for us, one more year, and we would have had 4 class years of students on campus that have actually started their educational college journey, understanding how hate appears, shows up for all communities, and not just based on the color of your skin, and not just based on what you have been exposed to. So it's a grounding. So I think we have to keep doing that work. And it's not always the most comfortable thing. And in lieu of all the things that have been happening, that work still has to keep going. So there's that tension space. You know, there are some families that might think we're not doing enough, right? And that might be true. I think we're still figuring that out, and we're still using all the tools and resources available to us, but we're committed to doing this work, and we'll continue to do this work until we start to see the impacts and the results that will come from it. And so that's my deepest desire and goal, but I do think that we have to keep doing it. So this year, and each year we tweak, right? So in the first year, it was like, oh, how do you do this how do
really
you
hard.
get people? You remember that
Yes.
first conversation. Are people going to be like, oh, what are they doing? But we did that, and we've tweaked it every year. And this year, not only will they have the main conversation about what is anti-Semitism, but then we'll be breaking into smaller groups. We're working with Constructive Dialogue Institute this year to do those small group conversations, to take it further, to do the peer-to-peer, because it's one thing to do on a big scale, large scope, but what does it look like when you then go into your residence hall? What does it look like when you're in the dining halls or in, the club sports or the intramural team? How do we get to the core peer-to-peer conversation? And so that's the next level for us.
Tom.
You can't do it in silence. Yeah. And I think this is a horrible lesson schools have taught kids since October 7th. We have stood proudly as the minority against all sorts of tragedies. You know, we have a universal declaration against hatred and oppression that lists out the parade of horribles. And I think kids should see that. I think institutions like ours should be comfortable taking a stand. We have a mission, we have a core value. We are private by the nature of being independent. So what's our excuse? We are not fearful of retribution. We can handle a hit to enrollment. We can be over-enrolled. If you don't like us, don't come. We're not the only brass ring in Manhattan. There are other fabulous schools, but we made the decision we weren't going to do it in silence. As you know, we made the decision it wasn't going to be perfect, and I wouldn't want to lead a perfect school. Kids and adults, our legacy has ebbed and flown, rightfully so, by our own mistakes, and why shouldn't this be a moment too? We're certainly not going to not lead out of fear. And you had a comfort of asking for some expertise. You came and led one of our early on courageous conversations where
with Ari Gordon.
A moment. We had a student leave in tears, and another student in tears over having loved Israel too much in the moment and not aware of the young lady behind her and her lived experience. But as was expected from schools that take the work seriously, the students cleaned it up on their own. The adults were involved, but the students knew at the end to figure this out together. I think, much like my colleague here with the big kids, still kids, and I think we've forgotten that at college, they're still kids. They still need to be taught, they still need to be led, they still need to be guided, and occasionally need to hear they're wrong. But I think the consistency of it, so we have taken much of the work we did with some urgency and somewhat with a little bit of a mess as we figured it out. We're beginning to institutionalize it, so our social media work now in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade will be consistently wrapped around the Middle East as an example of two truths and very malicious disinformation. We're going to use our discussion of Middle Eastern studies back in actual credit-bearing courses in our high school curriculum. We're going to have conversations with parents about interdisciplinary group dialogue and what it means to lean into a conversation, let alone lead it without making it even more incendiary than it began. And we're going to continue to learn and grow, that it is not a perfect science. I am well aware of families who chose not to apply to Horace Mann. Gaslighting I was accused of. I'm an Irish Catholic leading the charge, and I was accused of gaslighting. And you know what? I have a board, and if the 35 trustees at HM don't feel I'm serving the legacy correctly or admirably, they have a right to ask me to move on, and that's okay.
They won't.
Well, I hope so. 5 more years. But it's been a privilege to see it live large on campus alongside the other work we do. The colleges have a very nuanced intellectual war to wage, and it's not going to end. I grew up in a community where I knew anti-Semitism was just beneath the surface. You've heard me talk about my time in Scarsdale, where you were encouraged not to wear your Raider, your varsity jacket outside the village. I had the bagel face. I had all sorts of epitaphs when we played other schools. I think I was shocked at how easily people thought it was gone, that in our moment in time, anti-Semitism had been conquered. And then I went to Project Interchange and spoke to incredibly gifted scholars and politicians who thought peace was almost there with Palestine, that we were doing the right things at the kibbutzim, that we were leaning into our discomfort, we were sharing our medical expertise, our entrepreneurial spirit, and it's a perfect example of how wrong it can go, how quickly, when misinformation is out there. Not alone. When one group celebrates death and America and everyone else celebrates life, that's an interesting dynamic to raise kids in today, and that's why I was pretty outspoken, perhaps a tad so, in my community, that it's bullying. And in our community, beyond 6th grade, if you bully, you're expelled. If you're smart enough to be here, you're smart enough to know what bullying is. And the kids got it, which was even more frustrating.
Yeah. I have to say that one of the things we hear a great deal from our higher ed administrators is how important, and I know, Colette, you will be nodding your head vigorously at this, is we can't fix it on campus. We need the K-12 schools to step up. And that's actually why the Center for Education Advocacy has this arc of working with K-12 schools and with higher ed. It's so important, and as you've both just explained. So you just mentioned Project Interchange and travel to Israel. You both traveled to Israel. I was lucky enough to be on both of your delegations with you. How did your trip to Israel impact the way you addressed the post-October 7th or even the pre-October 7th situation in your schools? We'll start with you, Tom.
It not only fueled the fire, it straightened the nail. My wife had attended Hebrew U. My wife, who I admire and follow the rules because she volunteered in the IDF as a U.S. citizen. And when I heard that, I thought I will not be arguing with her. My daughter, who had her big day at Robinson's Arch, I knew I have a minor in religious studies. I went to a Jewish college and chose to minor in religions of the world. And I thought I knew. I'm the head of Horace Mann. I have all these degrees. I grew up, I didn't. And on Project Interchange, I experienced a tapestry of faith and culture and almost humanity, the very essence of who we are, not only united around difference, rallied around fear. And yet to see a functioning society navigate those two mantras, what's our excuse? When stateside we have so many individual freedoms, so many choices, so many places you don't have to be, why are we screaming at each other and sometimes screaming at the wall? So for me, it was an adjusting of what I mean by privilege. It was an adjustment of the rhetoric and the language. It was a reminder, anti-Semitism all through the Holocaust. It was a reminder of what we've done to other races and marginalized. Why is Jewish culture, faith, nationality not part of our difference work? So I had the chance to come back, and I'm encouraging AJC to send teachers. I had a chance to come back and double down, and this year have an administrator in the AJC leadership cohort, because we don't know. We don't know, and we need to know.
Yeah. And I think for me, I raised my eldest child in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood, right? We were the only minority family on the street for 3 blocks in a pretty Orthodox neighborhood as well. So the exposure to lived experiences of others was not something new to me or to our family. We built Sukkot, we did Seders, we did, you know how you're talking about your Passover dishes and keeping kosher and how you had the separate dishes, like we did all the things, okay? Because we wouldn't be able to have people over if we didn't do all the things.
On behalf of my people, I apologize.
That's so good.
And so I think there was already an exposure there. I think one of the things that I was really taken aback by in the college, in the higher ed landscape is how much the homogeneousness of our communities can keep us from knowing each other.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you have students that have never experienced a Seder or a Shabbat dinner or have any understanding around why you live the way you live, why you eat the way you do, or when there's no exposure to that, right, then that disinformation that you talked about becomes the information that you have. And I noticed that a lot on our college campuses. And so even in working with our Hillel and talking with our students who run our Jewish student organizations, I've been encouraging them to bring others into the fold so that they can be exposed to their lived experience and they can see your humanity and you can see their humanity. And there's an exchange of lived experiences that we have more in common than not. But I do think that is something that has to get tackled. And I'm glad that we're looking at that from the K through 12, but I also think in the college space, it's harder to, when you have information, that's a counter to disinformation, right? Without any kind of lived experiences, you can just take something, someone could say something to me, I'm like, that's not true. Like, no, that's not true, because, I have all of these memories and context to make sense of what is truth. To your point around, especially for the minority community, I think about the African American community, and I think about the civil rights movement. I think about who the people were that were standing there with the leaders on the bridges, making way, willing to stand arm in arm. That's a lost history. I think that's lost somewhere. And so this past fall, we had a Black and Jewish dinner. We worked with the Foundation to Combat Antisemitism to hold this unity dinner with college students from around the DMV, Blacks and Jewish, to kind of talk about that history and to share a little bit of that context, because the TikTok news can sometimes, some things get lost within that trend.
Just a few.
Just a bit. And so I do think that there's a historical context to live on. So what the trip for me did in Israel, it was put in, we talk about the complexity and the nuanceness, right? And I don't think people understand. So it's like a, catchword. You say, oh, it's very complex.
Yeah.
But when you're there and you're experiencing and communicating with people that's their daily lived experiences, it makes a difference. It takes some of the layers off for you to understand that you can have many truths lived together in context, right? And so I think the biggest shame from my perspective of watching what happened post-October 7th was the way that lines got drawn, right? To cut, like, people who are actually together wanting the same thing, somehow that the message got, the message, that the enemy became the wrong enemy, like, and it's, and that was really disheartening.
Yeah. Last question, our lightning round. What do you wish the world knew about your work at GW and at Horace Mann, and what are your goals for the future? Colette.
Ah.
Lightning round, though.
In 7 words.
The clock is telling me I have to wrap up.
Latin.
Okay. What I wish the world knew about GW. So right now, what I think people know about GW is the loudest noise, right? So all of that background foundational work gets lost. They don't know that we are still really building a foundation for present day and the future, right?
Don't believe the sound bites on social media. There's a lot more
There's a lot more there. And so what I want the world to know about GW is that we are committed. We're committed to fighting anti-Semitism and hatreds of all kinds on our campus. We're committed to doing that work and to building a foundation that can sustain for the future.
Tom.
You know, when you get to have a 150-year legacy, you have a right and a responsibility to stand for something. And I'm proud of the fact that community matters at HM. And in this moment, we need to remind everyone that within the definition of community is belonging. And belonging is a universal. Hate's a toxic, dead-end subject. But within that belonging, there's a willingness to listen, a willingness to see, a willingness to appreciate, and a willingness and a responsibility to speak the truth. And I think the greatest gift we can give our kids on the way out the door is not only that sense of belonging, but belonging is the change agent for peace, for a great future, for an inclusive world. And that's what we're pushing. We're not selling it. We're giving it away for free if you'd like to come. But I like the fact our kids sometimes say, and they want it on a T-shirt. I said it once at an event, and I thought, geez, that's going to wind up in the Post. I said at an event once where there was a bullying incident on campus, you know, you come for one of us, you come for all of us. And I want you in this moment to have that mindset when you enter a campus dorm. And look how hurt and hatred tends to go after the weakest, the most unrepresented in the herd, no matter what the topic. I also joke with the kids, we're the Navy SEALs of academia. That's going to wind up in the Post. So please no one repeat that outside of here. But with that comes a sense of loyalty to one another. I just want that loyalty to be anyone in front of you, behind you. I want the legacies to matter. I want the future to register. And I'd be devastated if I heard from a colleague at the college or graduate level if I saw one of our alums locked in a building causing harm, when we know they've got the skills, the written, the spoken, the agency to speak truth to power respectfully. This violence, the nonsense, the breaking of rules, the marginalizing should have no place in the gifts we give our kids on the way out the door.
Tom and Colette, it's been an honor to be in conversation with you, and more, it's been an honor to continue to work with you in the past, and I'm so much looking forward to continuing to work with you in the future. Thank you.
No, thank you too.
My name's Ben Masafi. I'm a sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania studying finance and international relations. I'm accepting the AJC Sharon Greene Award for Campus Advocacy on behalf of Pet Hillel. As a freshman in college, first month, it was chaotic. There was an emergence of a Palestine Rights Festival where we had Roger Waters coming to campus and speak, purposely done on Yom Kippur as well. 2 weeks after was October 7th, and so we were just completely thrown in. The encampment was made up of students and mostly non-students who were openly supporting Hamas, the PFLP, Iran, and other terrorist organizations that vowed to eliminate the Jewish people, the state of Israel, and the United States. Whenever I was walking, I had somebody following me to make sure I wasn't going into the encampment, and they were blocking me, really from parts of campus because they knew that I was a Jewish student who was concerned for my safety. Being blocked from certain parts of campus for our identity felt very isolating. There was no sense or indication from the administration that they were stopping it.
This is not an environment that we want. We don't feel safe. We don't feel supported by the administration.
The advocacy that I've done in response is I started a coalition called Pennsylvania Leads the Fight. We're focusing on state-level advocacy with Pennsylvania local, state, and the governor's office. We've seen that working together, unifying as one, has been really, really important considering the other side and who we're fighting against. Being awarded the Sharon Greene Award by AJC means so much for me, considering I've been involved with AJC for the last 3 years. My hope for Jewish students in the future is that we don't shy away from the challenges that are facing us and we continue to stand up for ourselves. You have to realize that the most important thing about a college is not about exactly the stuff about anti-Semitism, but about the community. The Jewish community and the Jewish spirit's never going to go away.
I'm Jacqueline Smeke. I'm the president of the Latin American Federation of Jewish Youth. I'm a Mexican Jew, and I always grew up in this amazing community who always had this amazing privilege of being a part of something great. Before October 7th, being Jewish on campus was like being like any other person on campus. But when October 7th got to be that real, anti-Semitism started to come out of the water. I saw that we had to strengthen our presence and to strengthen our identity, and that's when we started to create different support groups to spread the actual information of what Israel is, what Jewish life is, and not to keep people without actual knowledge of who we are. The Latin American Federation of Jewish Youth focuses on being one united front for Jewish people around Latin America. We have Mexico, who has never experienced like a big amount of anti-Semitism and are very proactive on this end. But on the other side, we have Chile, who has the biggest Palestinian community outside of the Middle East. But we also have Puerto Rico, who has a small Jewish community and have different needs than Mexico or Chile or Argentina. You have a voice and you have to make it heard. You have something that is very special and no one else has. You have a Jewish identity and you are part of something amazing. Make it noticeable, make it a part of you and carry it everywhere you go. Gracias al AJC por darnos la oportunidad de formar parte de algo tan grande y tan impactante.
My name is Daniel Solomon. I am a junior at Brown. I'm accepting the Sharon Greene Award on behalf of the Chabad of College Hill. The Jewish community at Brown is thriving. Of the Ivy League schools, Brown is the only one with a rapidly increasing Jewish population. So much of what we've been trying to accomplish at Brown is the concept of understanding and really trying to make sure that people understand anti-Semitism, its symbols, how it spreads and how it permeates. I was recently giving a campus tour as a public art tour guide, and one of our statues had a keffiyeh on it, and the protocol is to report it to Brown's Department of Public Safety, which I did. Police officers didn't understand that this was a keffiyeh. They thought it was a scarf, to which they responded, maybe the statue is cold. I think that it's incredibly important that we use these opportunities to take a step back and really work towards mutual understanding and towards education and awareness.
Students have freedom of expression. However, safety of students, Jewish students and otherwise, have absolute right to be safe on their campus, to not feel discriminated on their campus, and that is the most important factor moving forward.
Last school year, a proposal associated with BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, was brought upon on Brown's campus. There was a proposal on whether to divest from Israel. My role was working with administrators in conversation, also on the flip side to support the Jewish interest. To accept the Sharon Greene Award on behalf of the Chabad of College Hill means to be proud of our Jewish community, means to be validated and recognized for the work that we've done to combat anti-Semitism, to form a stronger, more proud Jewish community, and one that seeks to work within the administration and within the institution to really make some transformative change.
Please welcome AJC National Leadership Council members, Bill and Susan Green.
Good morning. I'm Bill Green. This is my wife, Susan Feinberg Green. In just a moment, we will meet the remarkable students featured in the powerful video that we all just saw. But before we do, we want to share a bit about the legacy of my late wife, Sharon Greene, and why this award is so important to our family. After Sharon passed away far too young at the age of 42, our family established this award in her memory to honor young students whose courageous stand for the Jewish community on the college campuses. Sharon cared deeply for others in a professional career as a psychiatric occupational therapist and as a social worker specializing in grief counseling, where she worked at New York Hospital and the Bedford Correctional Institute. She guided countless people through trauma with strength and empathy. In her personal life, Sharon was equally devoted to her family, to her community, to her synagogue, to Israel, and to all things Jewish.
Sharon also had unwavering faith in the next generation. This award, presented annually through AJC, is a tribute to her enduring legacy of service and her belief in the power of young people to create meaningful change in their communities and beyond. We are proud that Sharon's spirit lives on through this award. As we all know, being a Jewish leader on a college campus has grown more difficult in recent years. Since October 7th, that challenge has intensified dramatically. Jewish students, especially those who identify as Zionist or who express basic solidarity with Israeli Jews, have faced harassment, discrimination, and even violence. And yet, today's award recipients have responded with grace, courage, and Jewish pride. Today, we are honored to present the 2025 Sharon Greene Award for Campus Advocacy to 3 extraordinary organizations: Chabad of College Hill at Brown University, Penn Hillel, and the Latin American Federation of Jewish Youth. Please join us in welcoming Ben Masafi, Jacqueline Smeke, and Daniel Solomon.
Good morning, everyone. I would first like to thank AJC and the Greene family for bestowing upon me this great honor. It is a privilege to be speaking to you all today. I'm here to accept this award on behalf of Penn Hillel. Since October 7th, the staff at Penn Hillel have been the backbone of Jewish advocacy efforts on campus and have worked tirelessly to keep us safe. None of my work would be possible without the support of Penn Hillel. These past 2 years have not been easy as a Jewish student at the University of Pennsylvania. In my first week of college, it was announced that neo-Nazi Roger Waters would be speaking at Penn on Erev Yom Kippur. Soon after, our university president could not even say that a call for the genocide of Jews was against Penn's code of conduct. And last spring, a violent encampment took over our campus where protesters screamed, quote, "Hamas should do it again," end quote, at Jewish students when we displayed graphic footage of the October 7th massacre. And just 2 weeks ago, protesters screamed, quote, "Burn Hillel," outside of Hillel when we invited a former hostage and a Nova Music Festival survivor to speak. Yet, the unresolved issue ravaging through Penn and other American universities today are anti-Semitic professors who use their platform to demonize Jews and the Jewish state. One professor in the political science department, where I'm majoring in, tweeted, quote, "Playing the victim is what Jews are best at," end quote, and praised Hamas for how nice, quote, they treated the hostages. Another professor taught an Arabic literature course about, quote, resistance, and assigned readings authored by Hamas and PFLP terrorists. Both professors have received no condemnation or punishment from the university. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism is still alive and rampant at Penn, and it hurts to know that I go to class with, and I'm often taught by, people who actively use their platforms and positions of influence to demonize Jews and our right to a state and a homeland. Like every other group, myself and other Jewish students deserve a right to live and study freely on campus without fear for my safety or my ability to display my Judaism freely. Despite these incidents, I stand here today optimistic for the future. UPenn's Jewish community is stronger than ever. Penn Hillel has engaged over 80% of Jewish students on campus this year, our highest percentage ever. I'm actively working with the Penn administration to pass new open expression guidelines, increase Jewish student representation in our student government, and ensure that the student body knows that Jewish students are going nowhere. I've made long-lasting relationships with alumni, Philly Jewish organizations, elected officials, and most importantly, non-Jewish allies at Penn who have stood up for Jewish students when we were down. I'm optimistic that one day Penn will return to the glory that so many people in this room once knew and remember. Last summer, I started a coalition called PA Leads the Fight, where I've engaged dozens of students from 10 Pennsylvania universities united to fight anti-Semitism in Pennsylvania. It has been a privilege to meet so many amazing student activists from diverse backgrounds and campus situations, and we have had many successes. Currently, we are fighting to recognize the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to ensure that anti-Semitic misconduct at universities is handled quickly and effectively. We cannot be alone, and the only path forward is when Jewish students are together, collaborating, and being strong. Jewish students need to take their campuses back and not surrender to the fringe anti-Semitic students and professors that continue to harass and exclude us. I want to again thank AJC for always supporting Jewish students. Last summer, I was in the Goldman Fellowship Program, and this year, I have the honor of serving on AJC's Campus Global Board, where I built relationships with Jewish students around the world to create joint advocacy strategies. I also want to thank AJC Westchester Fairfield Regional Office for being my first introduction to all AJC has to offer. To my parents, thank you for being here today and for supporting me every step of the way. Thank you for prioritizing Jewish life in my upbringing and making it an inseparable part of my identity. I want to reiterate again to all of you here today. Listen to Jewish students and their stories. Invite Jewish students to speak at your synagogues. Raise awareness for Jewish students. Go up to students today and ask them about what is going on their campus and the help that they need. Give them advice. The Jewish community is only 2% of the population of the United States. We need to be united, and this global forum is the best opportunity to get together, strategize, and build unbreakable bonds between us as one community. I can guarantee you all that Jewish students in 2025 and beyond are strong and unbreakable. And to my fellow Jewish students from all around the world who came here today, be strong, do not back down. Know there is a way out of this, and you have all these amazing people here behind you, ready to fight for you and your safety. There is a reason you are all here today. Know that you are fighting the good fight, and we will win. Thank you.
Dear leaders, friends, and Jewish family, standing here today at AJC Global Forum is a great honor and a deep responsibility. This award is not just for Fehla, but instead it's for every young Jew who has chosen courage over silence, identity over fear, and action over apathy. For years, I asked myself, what does it truly mean to be Jewish? I thought the answer was in religion, in my family's history, or in my connection to Israel. But I realized something deeper. To be Jewish is to carry a light passed down through generations, one that we are responsible for keeping alive. October 7th was a turning point. For the first time, my generation felt what it means to live through a moment that shakes the very core of our identity. What we thought only happened to our grandparents or great-grandparents was now happening to us. But if history has taught us anything, it's that we are not a people who surrender. So we stood up, we showed up, and we lit our flame even brighter. The Latin American Federation of Jewish Youth, or FEJLA, was once an organization that had been inactive for years. It wasn't until 2024 that we realized how desperately we needed to bring it back to life. Why? Because many young Jews in Latin America were feeling lost, struggling to understand their place in their universities, their communities, and their countries. Latin America is vast, and many of our communities are small and distant from one another. But through FEJLA, we are bridging those gaps. Just this month, in partnership with AJC, we kickstarted our first online fellowship, where we are equipping young Jews from 5 Latin American countries to become no longer bystanders, but upstanders who fight to make their communities more vibrant, tolerant, and free of antisemitism. And next year, we plan to convene our first FEJLA Congress, where we will show that emerging Latin American leaders do not have to wait until tomorrow to raise their voices and make a political impact. Together, we are building a space where young Jews from across the region can come together, share their experiences, and empower each other. That's why FEJLA exists. Look around you. Here we are together, not as Mexican, Argentinian, French, or American Jews, but instead as one united Jewish community with one voice and one purpose. We are brothers and sisters, sharing a history, a legacy, and a promise to persevere. To my fellow young Jews, I say this: the future is in our hands. It is not enough to remember history. We must be the ones who build it. We cannot be mere antagonists. We must be the protagonists. The responsibility of our generation is immense, but so is our ability to transform the world. Porque la luz de un solo judío puede iluminar una habitación, pero la luz de un pueblo entero puede cambiar el mundo. Because the light of a single Jew can illuminate a room, but the light of an entire people can change the world. Thank you, Green Family, AJC, Campus Global Board, Vila, and all those who believe in us. We are especially inspired by AJC's unwavering commitment to Latin America and its Jewish communities. It is truly meaningful to share this stage with President Santiago Peña and Tabata Amaral, member of Brazil Chamber of Deputies, a testament to the importance of building strong bridges in our region. Today, we reaffirm our promise to keep fighting, to keep building, and to keep igniting the flame of our people. I'm Israel Hai. Thank you.
I am truly humbled to be with you this morning, and I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation to the Greene family and the American Jewish Committee for this incredible honor. If you spend an afternoon on College Hill, you would find that the most popular dining hall at Brown is the Kosher Kitchen. And if you stop by the Boathouse, you'll find members of the varsity men's crew team proudly wearing unisuits with a Magen David reading Am Yisrael High. And if you stay for Shabbat dinner, you'll experience the Olive Street Shuffle. Students running back and forth from the neighboring Brown Rizdi Hillel and the Chabad of College Hill in an effort to experience the very most of Jewish life. Kiddush here, dinner there, and joyous conversation on Olive Street in between. All within the university's Eruv, both a symbolic and deeply meaningful reminder that at Brown, Jewish ideas, thoughts, and expressions are robust, pluralistic, and unapologetically protected. And before you today, I have never been more proud to say that I am a Jewish student at Brown University. In fall 2022, following an anti-Semitic threat towards the Brown Rizdi Hillel, Brown's Jewish community expressed concern that the administration's response, while well-intentioned, did not adequately address anti-Semitism nor explicitly address the incident, effectively rendering it unnoticed by our peers. I, alongside a group of Jewish students, requested to meet with Brown's Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion to express these concerns. Thoroughly prepared with statistics and oration, we quickly realized these would be rendered useless, because before I could begin, the most miraculous event transpired. She reached her hand across the table, acknowledged the administration's shortcomings, and asked the simple question that changed everything: what can we do to better support Brown's Jewish community? In that moment, the Student Organizing Committee on Anti-Semitism was formed, establishing a collaborative, meaningful, and productive partnership rooted in the idea that education and mutual understanding dispels anti-Semitic ignorance and baseless Jewish hate. In just one semester, we developed interdisciplinary programs like the Conference on Anti-Semitism and Anti-Black Racism, conducted rigorous institutional research on Jewish life and anti-Semitism, and brought robust speakers to Brown's campus, including AJC Director of Academic Affairs, Dr. Sarah Kudin. But our collaboration with Brown's administration is no accident. Much like when Roger Williams founded Rhode Island, Brown was the first American university to formally ban religious tests for admission by virtue of its charter in 1764. And as we celebrate 130 years of Jewish life at Brown, we uphold this legacy through a rejection of litmus tests based on someone's shared ancestry and connection to the land of Israel. Despite our proactive and earnest efforts prior to October 7th, Brown was not immune from the tidal wave of anti-Semitism seen on college campuses across the country and indeed around the world. However, through our invaluable collaboration with the American Jewish Committee and our established relationships with Brown's administrators, chaplains, professors, and students, we ensured that institutional processes were upheld. Students have an obligation to adhere to policies and principles designed to protect and hold us accountable. We thoroughly confronted where freedom of expression, the bedrock of any great university, meets anti-Semitic hate, which must never be tolerated or normalized. The premise that if Jewish students are unsafe, the speech around them is not free, for it is hate. Soviet Jewish writer Valery Grossman once wrote that anti-Semitism is a mirror in which the society that produces it can be seen. It is through this perspective that we now look deeper, towards the issues plaguing such baseless Jewish hate. Students must learn to play in the sandbox and to share blocks, to hold difficult conversations, to challenge deeply held beliefs, and to constructively debate one another. A college campus should and must be a place where students are constantly challenged intellectually, but never physically, We must continue to counter misinformation with nuanced and objective truths. We must advocate for robust and unencumbered lectures, scholarship, and teaching. We must learn to respect each other and the community we share. And as today marks the start of my term as president of AJC's Campus Global Board, know that this will know that this will be the bedrock of our global Jewish advocacy, to protect the welfare of Jewish students, to uphold democratic values, and to explore innovative pathways for peace. I would like to extend my deep gratitude and appreciation to the Greene family and the American Jewish Committee for this incredible honor, and to the Chabad of College Hill, Brown Rizdi Hillel, the Student Organizing Committee on Antisemitism, and the Brown University Administration for their ongoing support, counsel, and trust. Thank you.